English, Standard 12, Unit 3, Prose, in celebration of being alive, written by Dr. Christian Bernard. In celebration of being alive, written by Dr. Christian Bernard. Introduction. There are several physically challenged people, such as Demosthenes, John Milton, Beethoven, Helen Keller, Mozart, Sudha Chandran, and Mariyappan Thangavelu. They lived successful and meaningful life. Demosthenes, a great Greek orator, had many physical defects to overcome. His most serious condition was stammering, but he became the great stammering orator. John Milton is best known for Paradise Lost, widely regarded as the greatest epic poem in English. He wrote it when he was totally blind. Beethoven remains one of the most admired composers in the history of Western music. He was totally deaf and unable to converse unless he passed written notes back and forth to his colleagues and friends. Helen Keller, an American author, political activist, and lecturer, was the first deaf-blind person to earn a Bachelor's of Arts degree. Mozart, a genuine composer and great musician, was totally deaf. Sudha Chandran, whose leg was amputated, became an accomplished Bharatanatyam dancer. And Mariyappan Thangavelu, physically challenged person, was India's first Paralympian gold medalist in the men's high jump in 2016. They overcame their shortcomings and proved who they were. This lesson, in celebration of being alive, was written by Dr. Christian Bernard. He was born in rural South Africa in 1922 to poor parents as their fourth child. He evinced great interest in his academics and was determined to pursue medicine after the loss of his brother. He won many scholarships and pursued his higher studies. He was the first doctor to perform a heart transplant surgery. He has received 36 international awards in his late years. He established the Christian Bernard Foundation to serve and promote the cause of underprivileged children throughout the world and died at the age of 78 in the year 2001. And here we have an extract of his speech, wherein he narrates an experience which has changed his perspective of life altogether. Let's find out what led to such a dramatic transformation. Let's find out from reading his extract what led to such a dramatic transformation. He begins by saying that he could not understand the purpose of suffering. In the lesson which we are about to read, my gloomy thoughts probably stemmed from an accident I had a few years ago. One minute I was crossing the street with my wife after a lovely meal together. and the next minute a car had hit me and knocked me into my wife. She was thrown into the other lane and struck by a car crossing from the opposite direction. So a few years ago, the author and his wife met a car accident, and they were just thrown in the street on the road. During the next few days in the hospital, so they were hospitalized, I experienced not only agony and fear but also anger. So when he was in the hospital, he experienced not only agony. Agony means extreme physical and mental sufferings. So during the next few days in the hospital, I experienced not only agony and fear, but also anger. I could not understand why my wife and I had to suffer. I had 11 broken ribs and a perforated lung. Perforated means torn and damaged with holes. Torn and damaged with holes. So in the accident, the author had, 11 broken ribs, and his lung was also damaged. My wife had a badly fractured shoulder. Over and over, I asked myself, why should this happen to me? Why should this happen to us? I had work to do. After all, there were patients waiting for me to operate on them. My wife had a young baby who needed her care. My wife had a young baby who needed her care. My father, had he still been alive, would have said, "My son, it's God's will. That's the way God tests you. Suffering ennobles you, makes you a better person. Suffering ennobles you, makes you a better person." Ennobles means morally noble. My father, had he still been alive, would have said, "My son, it's God's will. That's the way God tests you. Suffering ennobles you, makes you a better person." But as a doctor, I see nothing noble in a patient thrashing around in a sweat-snacked bed, mind clouded in agony. Nor can I see any nobility in the crying of a lowly child in a ward at night. As a doctor, the author was thinking about the sufferings of the patients and the people, those who were hospitalized. And moreover, he thought that sufferings came only to him. Few years ago, he and his wife met with an accident while crossing the street. A car had hit them and knocked him into his wife. She was thrown into the street, and another on the other opposite lane and struck by a car coming from the opposite direction. Dr. Bernard had 11 broken ribs and a perforated lung. His wife had a badly fractured shoulder. He experienced not only agony and fear, but also anger. He asked himself, why should this happen to them? He was just raising the question to himself. That is, sufferings should happen to the human beings. And this lesson is based on the idea that we must not feel terrified or troubled by thoughts of suffering and pain. But here, the author just expresses his view, saying that why should this happen to us? Why should human beings suffer? Let us continue this lesson in the next class.